How will the Bears guard Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen? That's the topic for today, Wednesday, September 3rd on Bleav in Vikings, which is presented by FanDuel. And I'm your host, Mike Wobschall, rejoined by my guy, Anthony Harris, former Viking safety. He's a frequent flyer around here on Bleav in Vikings, so we welcome him back in. What's up, Ant? How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. Nice to be back.
Yeah, man, it's good to have you back. It means it's football season when you and I are chatting, and I always enjoy our regular chats because I learn about the game, and we get to like look back on fun times and you and I had together, and we get to talk about the current state of the Vikings, and that's what we're going to focus on today. I think you've got a pretty good vantage point for us on a part of this Vikings Bears matchup that's really interesting to me, which is the prep that the Bears must have gone through, knowing that it was really just Justin Jefferson. Now that's kind of flipped on its head because Adam Thielen is back. So I want to talk to you about that from the Bears' vantage point, what might have changed. So that's what we're going to get into today on Bleav in Vikings. But first, are you a leader at your company? Are you waiting for the right candidates to apply, or are you tired of sorting through resumes? Good news for you. With ZipRecruiter's new advances, you can easily find and connect with qualified candidates in minutes. See a candidate you're really interested in? You can unlock their contact info instantly, no messing around, no waiting. Use ZipRecruiter and save time hiring. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And if you go to ziprecruiter.com/audio right now, you can try it for free. ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Try it. ZipRecruiter for free. ZipRecruiter.com/audio. All right, Ant. So I actually did like a little bit of studying, like research and coverages and this was before the Vikings signed Thielen. And I'm like, what do you do with a team that's just like, no disrespect to all the other guys, but it's like that one guy is so much better than everyone else. You're just going to focus on that because that's what I think you would do to the Vikings when Jalen Naylor is hurt, Jordan Addison is hurt, and all they have is Justin Jefferson. No disrespect to those other guys. But now you add Adam Thielen, and I know it's not like prime Adam Thielen, who, you knew better than anybody because you had to go up against him every day in practice. I know it's not prime Adam Thielen, but it's still like pretty good Adam Thielen. I mean, the last time he played a full season, and he had 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that. Like, do you think the Bears sort of had to add some prep or change their approach a little bit here?
I think they take a look at Adam Thielen and who is this guy? What's his style of play? You take a look at what he's done over the past few years, even in being in Carolina. How has teams utilized him when he's on the field? And then you pair that up with, Coach O'Connell, things that he's done offensively, and how can Adam be integrated into the offense, whether it's a short week. He's a veteran player. He's played in a number of systems. There's a lot of familiarity with the coaching staff and Adam. And so being able to communicate and kind of get them up to speed in terms of the terminology, I think those things will come into play.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have to take a look at, what have the Vikings done this offseason in addition to Adam Thielen. And, you take a look at the offensive line. And so from a game planning standpoint, you look at who do they have at receivers when you look at the Vikings. And, you think, okay, they have Justin Jefferson, Addison's out. Your game planning for one guy who you would think could carry a heavy load.
Mm-hmm.
But then also in pair with that, you have to think about, can you keep a guy over top of him and have two safeties deep or have a safety lean towards Justin Jefferson? And if you decide to do that, how does that affect the run game and being able to stop the run game? So that's kind of a base thought process that I anticipate the Bears will come into the game with prior to Adam Thielen joining the roster. Is taking that approach. Can we stop the run with the light box? How are we going to keep somebody over top of Justin Jefferson if we need to do that? And then you add in Adam Thielen. He's a savvy guy, can run, play a number of different positions, whether it's outside, whether it's inside. And so that allows them to move Justin Jefferson around to an outside X receiver, put him over on the Z or put him in the slot and allow him to kind of get free and not allow the defense to be able to pinpoint where he's going to line up pre-snap. So I think having Adam come in, a guy who's played a number of positions, played outside, played inside, he brings a dynamic to the offense that they can move him around, which will bring flexibility to where they're able to
Mhm.
do different things with Justin Jefferson as far as alignment standpoint. And then his deceptiveness with his route running, his ability to be able to kind of get in there and dig out some of those blocks, and how they'll come into play on some of those play action plays. So those are kind of some of the things that I envision the Bears to be able to take a look at in terms of figuring out how will the Vikings integrate, Adam into the offense on kind of a short week,
Mhm.
as well as what can the Bears do from an initial standpoint, and what are some of the countermeasures that they'll have to take depending on how the game goes.
I think it's a really, interesting matchup, Ant, because the Bears aren't, mm, you know, terrible at all on defense. I mean, they got a pretty good stout front, and Jalen Johnson is like he's a really good corner. I mean, that's a great matchup, Johnson and Jefferson.
Mhm.
I think Kyler Gordon's pretty solid in the slot. I'm looking at their depth chart, Brisker and Kevin Bayard. I mean, these guys are good players. So
Mhm.
this is a really good matchup, I think, for the Vikings. And I think when you and I talk about the Vikings for most of this season, we're going to be talking about it from the standpoint of, hey, it's Jefferson, it's Addison, it's Thielen, it's Naylor, it's Hawkinson.
Mhm.
This is a lot for this secondary to handle. But in this game, because of the suspension of Addison, the injury to Naylor, it's just a little bit more of a level playing field. So it's
Mhm.
interesting to hear you talk about that. You did talk about the run game, and I didn't even bring that up. When you're building a plan, even if the team that you're facing isn't known for running the ball, do you always kind of start there with the run game, or do you not necessarily always start there with how are we going to defend them with the run?
Well, I think it depends on the identity of the team.
Okay.
You take a look at the Vikings, and they're typically a team who's going to be trying to be balanced. Some runs in terms of zone, maybe a little bit of power, play action,
Hmm.
and not a lot of pure drop back offense standpoint. So their offense is predicated on being able to establish the run, running consistently, and be able to gain enough yards where it holds the defense to an honest defense each snap. And so I
Yeah.
think particularly looking at the Vikings and kind of how they've been, O'Connell has called the offense over the seasons and over the years. You kind of take a look at, we have to be able to stop this run. And I think in the past, teams have been able to do it sometimes. But if you take a look at the addition that they've made in terms of offensive interior and
Yeah.
building on top of what they already have, there's been a clear focus of continuing to be able to establish the dominant run, as well as keep the pocket clean for the quarterback as well. So I have to imagine that's going to be something that they'll come out with early and try to establish. And then kind of how you mentioned, having Hawkinson at the tight end position, a guy who's going to be in there digging people out a little bit in the run, but a guy who can open up that intermediate pass game off of the play action and off of some of those drop back things. It definitely would be another element to the game with Addison not being, a participant in that game on when they match up. But
Hmm.
I can see Hawkinson role kind of increasing as that tight end, or potentially third option, maybe even having them lined up in the slot and having another tight end to kind of change up the personnel to manipulate the game a little bit.
Hmm. The Vikings, you're right. They clearly wanted to be better running the ball on offense this year, and I think that was a big reason for their free agency additions. They used a first round pick on an offensive lineman, right?
Mhm.
They got Jordan Mason from the Niners. So obviously they want to get better running the ball. Talk me through what you think led the Vikings to get to that point. I can I can think of a few things that they hey, we're going to have a young quarterback. Let's have a good running game, right? Hey, we weren't very good in the red zone. Let's have a good running game, right?
Mhm.
So talk me through some reasons maybe you think, because Kevin O'Connell, he's a quarterback. He wants to dial up pass plays, right? But here the Vikings are ganging up to try and be better to try and be better running the ball. So talk me through what you think led the Vikings to say, hey, let's get better at running the ball.
Well, I think just to kind of touch on some of the points you mentioned, you want to take a look at how can we win games and win games deep into the playoffs, and
Mm.
that's being efficient in the red zone, being efficient in short yardage, converting some of those downs, and also just being better on first and second down. That way you make those third downs a little bit more manageable, and with the right the right system, the right players, everything can come together. You can be successful more often on third down. Those third and shorts versus those third and longer downs, and so establishing the run is going to be something that's key there. Keeping it honest, even if you don't run the ball, 25 to 30 times, if you run the ball enough and you consistently, have some of those solid runs or be able to pop some of those big plays in big games, it forces the defense to play it honest. And then you can also open up for some of those passes and deep shots,
Mhm.
which we know O'Connell, likes to do a bit. So I think it's very complimentary. And I think as you get deeper into the playoffs, you start to come up against some of those stout defenses where they're established by who they have on the defensive line and at that second level at linebacker. And then they do have some talented guys outside on the edge. And so you kind of pair those things up. And those are the defenses that you see late in the postseason. Defenses that can, stop the run. Sometimes often with a light box because they're defensive linemen and those guys at the second level are just that good, or the scheme's just that good. And then being able to, lean the numbers into your favor in the coverage game. But you have to be able to stop the run and control the line of scrimmage. And I think over the years, the Vikings have taken notice on how they've been in some close games, but haven't quite been able to, get over that hump in terms of establishing the run enough to then open up the pass for guys like Justin Jefferson to be able to, make some of those big plays and explosive plays that you may need in the playoffs, or simply just turn around and hand the ball to the running back a number of times and kind of insert your dominance up and down the field, or even in some of those short yardage red zone areas.
Yeah. So when you were facing a team that was pretty good, in the red zone, or even if they weren't, when you were in the red zone, let's say a team drove 60 yards on you and got you inside the 10, but you stood firm there and held them to a field goal. It's like, yeah, they got 3 points there, but you get a red zone stop that, you kind of almost, I don't want to say it's a win for you, but you feel pretty good about a red zone stop preventing a touchdown, right? Did you feel like if a team was really good at running the ball, they probably had a good chance to be good in the red area?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Uh, once you get down in that red zone, the play call sheet, it shrinks.
Mm.
The field, there's no more going vertical with the pass game. Everything's kind of running sideways. And so, guys are coming downhill. And so if you can stop the run and teams know that, it's going to be a struggle to, be able to punch it in with the run game, you kind of gain an extra defender in terms of the back line and
Yeah.
forcing guys to throw the ball, forcing guys to throw the ball like over your head and don't give up some of that stuff underneath, and essentially force the quarterback to fit the ball in tighter windows down in the red
Mhm.
zone. So if you can force teams to do that and teams can't run the ball in, or you can't establish the run to be able to punch it in, it makes it a little bit more difficult to get in there in terms of just turning around, handing the ball to the running back, creating some of those play action plays where you get the defense to bite up and you can kind of throw a pop pass over the tight end, over the linebackers' heads, or get some of those guys peeking in the backfield, trying to take care of run
Mhm.
responsibilities. It just adds so many other layers to things that you have to defend when you get down in the red zone if you can run the ball.
Yeah. Take me through like the very early stages of a game, where you've got this game plan on defense because you're anticipating what they're going to do in certain down and distances, but you also know there's going to be unscouted looks early in a game, right? What's that like for you as a defender as you're sort of experiencing the first 10, 15 snaps and reacting, but you're also trying to rely on your study and your practice habits all week? What's that balance like? And I'm kind of thinking of it through the prism of the Bears here.
Mhm.
Like what are they going to be thinking about in the first 10, 15 snaps here of this Kevin O'Connell offense with a new quarterback, JJ McCarthy, behind center? Like what are the Bears thinking about early on?
Well, I think you take a look at opening up. You had look at the roster. Okay, they have a young quarterback who's coming in. They have a new improved offensive line. And then they're adding some guys to the receiver room on kind of a short week, and a few guys may still not be there with Addison being out, and
Hmm.
so you have to think that they're going to come in and try to establish the run. They're going to kind of get their quarterback, get JJ in a rhythm, in terms of giving them some nice easy throws,
Hmm.
kind of getting the offense in the flow with establish a few run games, and then anticipate that there will be a shot somewhere along in the drive. And so from a defensive standpoint, I have to imagine the Bears are going to come out, try to keep it pretty simple, defensively, and so that let their guys play fast in terms of just relying on their fundamentals and principles of coaching up, and not running anything too sophisticated early on, and let the players kind of get settled in. It's first game for everybody. There's going to be high energy. So from an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator standpoint, you kind of want to run some things that's going to get guys settled in, and not have to think too much. But then you're also going to throw in some wrinkles that kind of cut guys loose, or maybe add to the aggression that's out there. Whether it's calling a simple blitz, not one of your more complicated ones, but maybe just a nickel pressure or something to kind of get a player going, and that can kind of set the tone for you. So that's what I have to imagine the Bears will try to do coming out in this game.
Is it tempting, going off of what you said, and about, hey, they might want to get this quarterback in a rhythm here with some not simple, nothing's easy in this league, but
Mhm.
some routine completions. So then, do you feel tempted as a defense to call coverages that emphasize taking away short routes, underneath routes? Do you feel tempted to do that early in a game every week or not?
No, I think you have to play it pretty honest.
Mm,
You really kind of pick which way the fence you're kind of going to go on. There'll be some coordinators who come up and say, hey, we're going to kind of set the tone early. We're going to put some pressure in his face. We're not going to allow them to just sit back, and dial up plays. And then there'll be some coaches and defensive coordinators who say, hey, we know that you're going to add extra guys into the play action, and keep the pocket clean. And
mhm,
so that in those situations, they'll play pass heavy, and give up some of those underneath things, and kind of let from a defensive standpoint, we talk about letting the offensive play caller kind of get through those first 15 plays where he
yeah,
may be on a script of some plays that he wants to get to, or he's kind of running a few plays to see how they'll respond and might set something up a little bit later. But after you get past those first 15 plays, from that point on, you're kind of just calling based off of what you see in the flow of the game. But early on
mm,
will kind of be some things that teams want to either establish and set up for later, or they just want to see, how they're going to respond. If the offense is going to come out and be aggressive, how will the defense respond to that?
interesting. Yep, that's right, and you're totally right about that. There's a chess element here where offense and defense, you're calling things early on because in the back of your mind after halftime, you've got something that you want to get to, right?
Hmm.
On both sides of the ball. And I think that's a really cool component of like strategy and of play calling is the strategy to set that up, the patience to wait on it, and then the timing to call it at the right time, right? In a key moment, man. That's so cool. Who are some of the better like play callers either side of the ball that you've been around? Coaching staff. Anyone that stands out to you?
I mean, there there are a lot of different, coaches out there who I admire in terms
Yeah.
of, like, their schemes and how they call things. And I think, if I'd had to list a few, there's probably be ones that we've heard often,
Hmm.
like the Sean McVays,
Yeah.
the Kevin O'Connell coming off that tree. You can kind of see how there's some similarity from that. The Shanahans, and just
Hmm.
there's a number of, like, uh, pretty brilliant minds in terms of creativity. I think one guy who's emerging now, the Ben Johnson,
Yeah.
and kind of his evolution, in what he's been able to do prior to the Bears. And so I think it'll be very interesting. I think that
Mm.
matchup, I'm kind of excited to see the Ben Johnson versus Flores.
That's cool,
Um,
man. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
I'm kind of excited to see that aspect of the game. Also adding, the additions to what the Vikings did defensively from defensive line standpoint,
Yeah.
and even into the
Yeah.
secondary. So that'll be exciting.
How about on defense for a play caller? Was there someone that you played for or someone that you just watched while you were in the league? Maybe you didn't play for him or you did play for him, but someone who was, you were just like, dang, that guy, like he just got a knack for calling the right play on defense at the right time. Anyone stand out to you?
Well, I've always kind of admired Fangio, Vic Fangio's,
Yeah.
defensive schemes. Kind of everywhere he's went, he's had players that have been very productive. A lot of too high defenses and different zone pressures and blitzes and things of the sort. So I think guys like him, you take a look at other people around the league, obviously being under Mike Zimmer for a number of years. It was
Yeah.
exciting to be part of that system, as well
Mhm.
as taking a look at what Flores has done, and what he's done not only with the Vikings, but with the Dolphins, and just the identity, and the toughness and the edge that those coaches bring, to those defenses. They're things that I admire.
Yeah. I think you knew, like, at the end of a game with you guys and Zim, like, you knew some pressures were coming at the end of a game. Like, he didn't want to prepare you guys all week for those pressures and then not call them.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what I always felt about him, you know?
yeah. And so that's the exciting part. And I'll be interested to see how the game plays out in terms of you know, when the offense gets their first possession, where they get the ball on the field. And I think that'll kind of dictate a little bit on, some of the play calling that we see early on is,
Yeah.
as exciting as it is to, those 60-yard bombs to Justin
Mhm.
Jefferson out the gate. There's a little bit of, strategy in terms of managing the game with field position, and things of that sort. And so, I think it'll be exciting to see how things play out. And I look forward to watching the game.
Yeah, man, me too. All right, I want to ask you one more thing, and it's about JJ McCarthy. And then we're not going to predict necessarily the score or anything like that, but I'm curious what you think sort of like the game flow will be. So I want to ask you those two things. But first, want to talk about one of our partners here at Bleav in Vikings, which is Heritage Gear. Life's most meaningful passions deserve something special, and that's exactly what Heritage Gear offers. Whether you're showing pride in your alma mater or supporting your favorite team, Heritage Gear luxury travel bags, weekenders, totes, and accessories are more than just products. They're classic keepsakes, handcrafted with the finest materials and designed to last. Each piece is a timeless reflection of what shapes us. With Heritage Gear, you're not just carrying a bag, you're carrying your story. Explore their collection at heritagegear.com. A premium experience built to travel with you wherever life takes you. Use the promo code PRIME30 for 30% off your purchase today at heritagegear.com. Okay, Ant, McCarthy, man, I get asked the thing I get asked the most by people, like when you run into people who want to talk football with you, right? At the gas station or wherever you're at.
Mhm.
What do you think of McCarthy? Do you get asked that? I do all the time.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. And I'm like, he must be like really ready to go. And I think that because we saw him play for one half last preseason and we saw him play one series this preseason, and that's it. There's no way Kevin O'Connell's going to run him out there if he's not ready, you know? So he
Mhm.
must be ready. That's what I think, and so that's what I say to people. But I don't know. I mean,
Yep.
what's your sense, man? Like he hasn't played a ton in these preseason games.
Yep.
What do you think they're thinking, and how do you think he's going to look early on?
Well, I think over the years it's kind of evolved. Training camp has evolved.
Yeah.
The number of joint practices that teams have now and kind of go through, and how they're actually utilized. Before it was a lot of play guys during the preseason. Now it's kind of moved away from a lot of your premier guys playing in the preseason games, and oftentimes they're getting majority of the reps during those joint practices. So you're getting to see good on good, ones on ones. And no, it's not full tackle to the ground. There's that aspect that shows up when it's prime time game lights. But in terms of knowing your assignments, reading keys and executing, and it's running and catching the ball and making guys miss and some of those things. They're a little bit easier to see during those joint practices, and sometimes you can see what you need to see during those practices,
Okay.
and then let that aspect of full go, um, real time for the marbles, kind
Mhm.
of let that come into play. And so I have to imagine that Coach O'Connell and that staff has seen enough during those joint practices. Whether it's you know uh, you know sidestepping a guy who's coming and allowing the running back to pick up the block. and you having confidence in that and getting to your first and second and third progressions, those are the things that you want to see.
Mhm.
And so, there'll be a time that you see, okay, will he be able to take a hit? And you kind of can get that sense of, okay, preseason one, maybe we'll take a shot play. And,
Yeah.
we'll give him that one opportunity to, sidestep a guy, pit the ball with good placement, while maybe taking a shot. But you don't want to put him in too many of those positions. And it's just preseason. You have some time to evaluate him during some of those joint practices, and you're honestly just getting ready to go for the big games on Sundays and Monday nights and Thursday nights as well.
Yeah. I think you're right, man. A big key is the joint practices, right? Um, I think those have really, you're right. Those have changed sort of not just the preseason games, but the whole like end of July to the end of August, like that whole thing. I think you just get so much work, like meaningful work done in the joint practices.
Mhm.
Then you don't have to expose people to injury and stuff in the preseason game. And the beauty about that is I think you can probably control the tempo a little bit more in those joint practices than you can in the preseason game. So,
Mhm.
it's probably a lot safer. I'm super excited to see him unveil McCarthy. Like, I know we're not going to sit there and watch 50 dropbacks in week one, but I have so much belief or so much, trust in O'Connell and in just the staff that they must know he's ready,
Mhm.
so I'm excited to see it. And I don't expect him to do better or do just as well as Darnold did. Darnold had
Mhm.
35 touchdowns last year. I mean, they won
Yeah.
14 games and he had 35 touchdowns,
Yeah.
so I don't really hold him to that standard
Mhm.
because I don't think that's fair. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
just I just expect him to play the game well. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah, I think he's coming into a offensive system, as well as a roster where he doesn't have to go out and and win you the game on his back.
yeah.
There'll be some opportunities where he definitely has the opportunity to make some big plays, whether that's if he decides to run on a play or, stepping into a throw or, his ball placement or decision
Mhm.
making. There'll be some opportunities for him to display that. But I think, if you just take a look at, how this team is structured and, what they need to do in order for to win the game, he can come in, make some good decisions, get out of the pocket, get him some nice throws on the edge, make some good decisions with if it's there, can he get 3 or 4 yards on a run or maybe even something more?
Yeah.
But he's not going into an offensive system where you're asking him to sit back and throw the ball 40 times. And so
Yep.
I think that only plays into his favor. Not saying that he won't potentially be able to step into a role like that, but he's not being asked to. And so I think he's in a great position in terms of all the pieces around him,
Yeah.
uh, great coaches, some veteran leaders, and he just has to come in and just be himself.
Yep. I agree with you, man. And he's got good pedigree. I mean, he won a lot of games at Michigan. He's, been an athlete his whole life. He just seems like pretty cool, calm, and collected. So it's an exciting time for Vikings fans, and because it's not every year that you're launching a franchise quarterback,
Mhm.
out there for everyone to see and to find out. So that's where
Mhm.
the Vikings are at right now. So it's kind of exciting. Okay, let's get out of here on this one. I'm not going to change my answer, even if you come up with a different answer and it's very well reasoned and you know more than I do. I promise I won't change it. I have an answer to this, and sort of a way I think the game's going to go. But I'm curious how you think the game is going to go on Monday night when the Vikings and Bears square off. And I don't just mean who's going to win, what's the score going to be. That's very hard to nail down.
Mhm.
But give me a minute, 60 seconds on just like what you think we're going to see the game flow and what you think is going to happen. And I'll return the favor. I'll give you my guess too.
I think both teams are going to come out, try to establish the run a good bit.
Okay.
Both teams have young quarterbacks,
Mm-hmm.
some additions on both sides of the ball. So I have to imagine that they'll both come out trying to run the ball a bit. I see, Flores pulling out his scheme a little bit in terms of how he'll bring up different looks. I think the addition to the defensive line and that secondary level with the linebackers and the edge players,
Yeah.
I think that they'll be a difference maker in this game. I believe that they'll kind of show up pretty early and then they'll force Caleb Williams to use his legs a little bit to
Mm-hmm.
possibly buy more time or get out of trouble. But I see the Vikings defense, coming up and, producing and giving the offense enough opportunities to go down and score some points, and the Vikings pulling out a victory.
Okay. We're pretty close.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's a low scoring game that the Vikings win because the Bears can't score enough. Like the
Mm.
Bears are stuck at like 10 or 13 points, and
Hmm.
it's 20-13 or 22-14 or something like that.
Hmm.
And I think my answer would be different if this was like halfway through the season
Season, yeah.
and everyone had all their weapons.
Hmm.
Because I think part of the problem here for Chicago is new head coach with a young quarterback. And I think Caleb is like a fly by the seat of his pants playmaker, like a guy you'd want out in the backyard or at the schoolyard at recess. Like he can just
Hmm.
make plays on the fly and stuff doesn't go right, but he makes it work because he's such a great athlete. And I think Ben Johnson is like, no, we do it like this, A,
Fits,
B,
yeah.
C, D, E. And so I think there's like a little tension there early on that they need to wrinkle that out, like get those kinks wrinkled out and just
Hmm.
get their system. But I think it's going to take a little while.
Yeah. Yep.
So that I think is going to lower the Bears' really ability to score a lot of points early in this. I'm overanalyzing this early in the season, so I think that's going to lower the Bears' score. And then I think the Vikings, on the road,
Hmm.
Chicago, first time as a starter, Addison's hurt, so I think the Vikings are just a little more subdued on offense, maybe than they will be later in the season. So I think the second Bears Vikings game is going to be awesome. And the ball's
Hmm.
going to be in the air. There's going to be points because these quarterbacks can scramble, man. I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
when you get don't you think when you get quarterbacks who can move, it's like, you know what? We got him in a 3rd and long. We got a pressure called. We had a free rusher and the guy got free,
Yep.
right? The quarterback
Yep.
got out. Yeah. I
Hmm.
think that will happen to teams that face McCarthy and Caleb Williams. But I
Yeah.
think you're
There'll be some
told.
plays.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
There'll be some plays where JJ will be able to make a guy miss and buy some times, and there'll also be some plays where the offensive line holds up. And, he goes to his
yeah.
first or second read and they're covered, and he's able to escape out of the pocket and buy time and find somebody else for
Yeah.
explosive plays. So I definitely see that popping up. The other aspect that I would think about, playing at the Bears is, how's the wind going to be? I know it's pretty
Ooh,
early.
yeah.
I know
Mhm.
it's pretty early in the season, so it's not, some of those late winter games where it's extremely windy. But I'm excited to see how that's going to play into special teams as well as the first game. There's always going to be some little bit of jitters, maybe a little bit of sloppiness, maybe a little bit of missed tackles, or bad angles being taken early on in the game. And so I'm excited to see how teams adjust coming out in the first game and everything's live, and how they're going to adjust to going to training camp and preseason, or
Mhm.
not playing in the preseason as much, and just kind of blowing by guys on a tap off. But what are you going to do in terms of putting yourself in a position to physically get guys on the ground?
Yep, that's right, man. First game of the season opener. You've had a few of those in your day, man. Any memories from a season opener, high school, college, pros? First game maybe in the NFL? Any memories?
Oh man, I think one of my first game was my first year Thursday night start. That was my first experience.
Oh, okay.
Kind of just Thursday night big game for me. And I Bleav maybe in 19, I think the first game might have been the Falcons.
Okay.
If I can Bleav right. I had 2 interceptions. So I think that
Ah,
was probably my best start. But I just know those home openers are like, it's special. It's a great here we go moment of like long training camps, spring, a lot of going against your own
yep.
guys on your team. And it's like, okay, now we're finally a team. Now we're
Yeah.
not competing against each other.
Yeah.
We're in it together to win this game, offense, defense, and special teams. So that first one is kind of a big one. And from there, it's just about, building momentum throughout the season.
Yeah. I remember one year, I'm pretty sure this was a season. It Did we open at San Francisco and we wore white on white uniforms like on a prime time when we got worked? And
Yeah, that's my
uh,
first year.
okay, was it?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my first year. And I stayed back behind that trip. At that point, I was just on practice squad. I didn't get elevated to like week
Okay.
14.
Okay.
But yeah, we wore all white and we we played. I think that might have been one of the very last times that we actually wore all white. And
Yeah.
Zim
Zim was
mentioned it.
out.
We're not gonna wear that anymore. Yeah.
Uh,
And so he was like, it looked good, but guys bought too much finesse, maybe not enough, physicality for him. But the performance just wasn't there.
yeah. There's some funny moments like that with Zim. You do that, you're not wearing white on white anymore. I remember one time we were it was our first year at TCO Performance Center, and it was like in the summer, like at the end of training camp or something, and we were doing a production meeting, and so the crew was in there like talking about how great the facility looks and it's so nice here, and Zim was like, yeah, he's like, yeah, but I told the guys if they don't play well, we're going back to Winter Park for
Mark,
practice.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. That was him. That was his first year. He's like, we got this nice indoor. Yeah, Winter Park. The way the field was structured, sometimes we had to go outside. But he's like, hey, like we're still gonna practice outside. You're like, coach, like we have an indoor. He's like, nope.
We're
The
going.
Bears are outside. Green Bay's are outside. We're practicing outside. So he made sure we practiced in environments that we were going to play in. He tried his best.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was good. Well, he had a good run. We won a lot of games, so
Mhm,
that was good stuff. But the beginning of a season is always an exciting time, man. So
mhm,
fun talking ball with you. I'm excited to be doing this on a more regular basis.
mhm.
Let's watch this Vikings Bears game, and then we'll get together next week and talk about it. And then we'll look ahead to week 2, which is against the Atlanta Falcons, who you
Yep.
already mentioned. So
Mhm,
Michael Penix Jr. and a pretty explosive offensive group there in Atlanta. So that'll
mhm.
be a fun game to talk about as well. So,
Yep.
all right, man. Well, we're both on the Vikings here, and we both kind of are thinking maybe a lower scoring game where defense makes some plays to put the Vikings over the edge. So,
Mhm.
we'll see if we're right or not, and then we'll talk about it next week. All right.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
All right, man. Take care.
All right.
That's going to do it for this episode of Bleav in Vikings. My thanks to Anthony Harris, as always, for joining me, and my thanks to you guys for listening and for watching. Make sure you download, like, follow, and subscribe to Bleav in Vikings. You can find us wherever you find all your other favorite podcasts. We're also on YouTube. On behalf of Anthony Harris, this is Wobby signing off for now. Until next time, everyone, always remember, keep believing.